Hello and thank you for tuning in for my playthrough of the game Elden Ring. So this is my playthrough of me playing the game on PlayStation 4, just a regular one. But I think I'm pretty impressed how it holds up. I was expecting some severe lagging issues, but I don't have that at all. In some areas was like lots of enemies on screen, but more to that later. So that game is phenomenal. I think it's amazing. I really love it. I enjoy it. I got lost in it for lots of time, and this playthrough is not a speed run. It's a slow run. I hope the part you can take from it as enjoyment is uh, my rambling and me just giving my thoughts and my ideas. So, thank you very much for tuning in. Let's get into the video. Hello, welcome for my video. Today I wanna show you a bit of my gameplay of Elden Ring. This game really had me absorbed, to say the least, for the last week since release. So I will show you a bit of the gameplay. This is the early hours of me getting into the game. So, and something I want to just note here. I sped up the recording for the game. So, I did not record me and the gameplay at the same time. I will just talk a bit while going over the video and watching together with you. And I changed the playback speed of some of the parts. So some parts might be slowed down for dramatic effects, but most of the time the gameplay will be sped up, as it's quite a lot of gameplay. And I hope you just enjoy me talking and giving my knowledge as a Souls veteran. So regarding myself, I got into the games of FromSoftware actually before they released even Demon Souls in 2000. Sorry, gotta look it up later. And played the Armored Core games of FromSoftware, and yeah, have been a huge fan. So I consider myself a veteran. I'm a huge fan of the games for long. So, of course, the game starts with creating your character. And usually in these games, it does not matter which class you pick. You can allocate stats later on your preference. So you can build any character, any class you want. In the end, you're not locked out of anything. So choosing a class is, for the most part, for most players, pretty much irrelevant. So one more time. Which class you choose is pretty much irrelevant. It's just your starting experience, how the game feels in the first 1, 2, 3 hours. But there's still something, even on the long run, that needs to be mentioned. You cannot go below your starting stats, which means if you want to min-max for a specific level for online competitive online play, it might make a huge difference if you have, like, let's say you start a character with 8 points in phase or 16 points in phase, which is 8 levels. If you have then another stat that has, let's say, 2 or 4 undesirable points invested into that stat, that might be 10, 12 levels that that you would otherwise spend into on a different stat. So even in the realm of up to level 100, 120, 10, 12 levels is still quite a lot, and to have them invested in the wrong stat as opposed to the stats that you want might make a difference to building exactly the character you want for competitive online play. But this is more something, I don't want to go into like the meta, what are meta builds in the Souls community, but this is kind of looking a bit ahead into the future and looking what kind of character, what kind of build do you have in mind for your character. So the next big challenge, or should I say the first really big challenge, is creating the looks. And as you can see, I spent lots of time on the looks. I think I've spent, considering that this gameplay footage is sped up, I spent at least an hour on character creation. So for my first main character, usually I go for pretty average look. Nose, not too big, not too small. Mouth, not too big, not too small. I generally don't like it if you think if the chin is like fleeing, like if it's like standing back, or if it's like protruding, like standing forward too much. So I like it pretty much like to be the part of below the nose to be just straight, kind of like, you know. For the nose, I like it if it's also more like a straight nose, like maybe mine is like pointing a bit upwards. For characters I create, nothing too ridiculous. The nose should neither point up like a piggy nose, nor should it like look like an upside down check mark. So it should not be like a hook. Ears, I don't really care. I don't think the game has sliders for ears, now that I think about it. For the chin and for the jaw, I like it if it's a bit on the more masculine side, like a bit wider, a bit of a stronger jaw, but not Giga Chat-esque. So not ridiculous. nothing ridiculous. And I think I went for mostly European, North European, Nordic person look. Maybe I had that kind of like a Central European Viking image in my head. Also, usually my first character, I tend to I like to have them a bit younger, but still mature. So overall, I would say the character I like to create is close to me, something I can relate to, but probably an idealized version of myself. Like, if I look into the mirror and think like, okay, like just broadly myself, but a bit better, a bit prettier. Like, if I look at myself, like, how could I make myself better? Just like changing my nose a bit, or like face a bit like sharper, a bit of a sharper chin, less fat under the chin, kind of like that. I think you get it. So something that I can relate with, but something that I think looks aesthetically appealing. Usually my second character, usually I make a female character. My third one, I go like, I create like an older person, or very muscular, or like a. The more characters I create, the more I go into the crazy realm of creating really unique characters. But my first primary character that I play the most time, that I get into the game first, that I try to just be immersed into the game, I try to have that character be relatable to me. So yeah, I also went for white hair. I think it just looks dope. I didn't want the hair to be like grandpa white. Just silver or bluish, grayish white. Something that I did not notice. The skin tone here in the character editor looks kind of bright. It's like a lighter tone. So looks pretty much like a white European. But in gameplay, the character in many situations looks a lot darker, like a has a much darker skin tone,
the fallen leaves,
which probably is also due to the hair and the beard and even the eyelash and the eyebrows being completely white. So yeah, it might just be the contrast or the color setting of the game. So for the intro,
in our home,
I think it stands in line with past Souls games.
The lands between.
I had the feeling it was quite long. I think they tried to squeeze the background lore and previous events that led up to the situation that the world is in now, the world of Elden Ring. They tried to squeeze that a bit into the opening, while at the same time introducing relevant characters. Still images, but I think absolutely well done, tasteful.
Marika's offspring.
Not every opening needs to be animated.
Claimed the shards of the Elden Ring.
CG, computer generated.
the mad taint of their newfound strength triggered the shattering. A war from which no lord arose. A war leading to abandonment by the greater will. Oh, rise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Horalu, chieftain of the Badlands.
So, getting into the game, I had a very slow start.
Fear, the deathbed companion.
Yeah.
The loathsome dung eater.
New games, I have to get into the gameplay mechanics, and I don't know where the term comes from. I think it's not my creation, but the term enjoyment, retention. If I really like things, I'm the type of person who falls into that category. I'm the enjoyment retention type. So
cross the fog.
Yeah, like I go really slow into the game, like looking into every corner and getting a feel for the game. So you will see me
and become
testing out
Elden Lord.
My main weapons, testing out how the buttons correspond to actions. A lot of things feel familiar, like a lot of movesets feel like they are just more polished versions of previous iterations and previous games of FromSoftware, like the Katana Moveset. So of course you have the light attack, which combos, and you have the strong attack, which in this game you can charge. Really nice. I think they implemented that charging mechanic from Bloodborne into Elden Ring, adding some complexity. Something that I really struggled in the first 10 minutes was learning how to not to switch your weapon from the right hand weapon in the first slot and the second slot, but how to dual wield your right hand weapon, or how to dual wield your left hand weapon. And in the past, that had been done through a single button click on PlayStation games through the triangle. In this game, they added a lot of complexity to it by making you hold the button and then adding up another menu where you can use up items or consumables from your inventory through the directional buttons while holding the triangle button, and at the same time allowing you to dual wield either your right hand or your left hand weapon. So that took some time for me to get used to it. I think that has been the biggest change in terms of gameplay. Much bigger than having a dedicated jump button. And something that just comes to my mind that I was struggling a bit in my first hours of gameplay was that I thought there was some kind of delay, like the game is maybe lagging or my controller is laggy. There's an issue maybe, or it's just inherently the game which is laggy. I thought, because oftentimes when enemies would attack me, strike for me, I would push the button and try to roll, and I thought the roll would come always way too late. So I was reading up, and it seems like this is an issue due to the game registers the input as a roll with the release of the button, not the click of the button. That's probably due to both running and dodging being assigned to one button. So if it would register with the click of the button, you would not be able to use the button for running. So you would click it and you would immediately roll and not be able to go into a sprint. So if you hold the button down for a time of, let's say, longer than 0.3 seconds, the game will register it as you trying to dash, to run. But if you click the button and release, it will register as you intending to roll. So it's possible to have a short delay. So you can, if you click very fast, like click release, like click, you might get a roll pretty fast. But if you're like me and you have the habit of tightening up, so sometimes if I'm like in tension, I'm like pushing hard and too long, like giving a push and releasing, push, release, instead of a quick click. It's possible to delay the roll, the dodge, making it feel like there's a huge delay in your input and the character on screen rolling, which is not the case. That there's no real delay, but it's compared to other games. If you're used to action games where you're actively rolling and dodging and circling around enemies, it might take some rewiring your muscle memory as a gamer, to not keep the thumb on the button resting, but to go for quick clicks when trying to roll. Quite important, I think. I think easily it's something that's not explained in the game. It's an information you might find on the Extra Life, on the wiki, on the fan wiki, and information that you might find on forums, in like game facts, or in the comment sections of YouTube videos. So, especially with this game, where specific information about some mechanics is a scarcity, and From is sometimes not really clear and transparent about giving the player too much detail and information on how things work. So important, I think, to look up things online. So this is me getting into the first boss, and for bosses I slowed down the gameplay, sometimes even below regular speed for some dramatic effects, but I try to keep things like this to a minimum. For the first boss, not having any healing items means every hit, every damage you take is permanent, and people who beat the boss on first try usually use the bow. I didn't go for the samurai, not for that reason. I just chose the samurai because it fit my planned build the most. So you see me, of course, dying and losing to the first boss. I don't know the name. Get back to me. Which leads to this, I felt, awkward transition. If you beat the boss, if you were to beat the boss on your first try, you would walk to a ledge past the boss, and with nowhere to go, the ledge would crumble with you falling into the water and then being washed into this cave. But if the boss kills you or beats you, it nevertheless transitions into this scene, which could have been handled more elegantly. Also, for cutscenes and NPCs talking, I tried to keep playback speed at regular gameplay speed.
Don't worry, Torrent.
So yes, this gameplay and the footage and everything you're gonna see is extreme spoiler. It's outright the full gameplay. Nothing blurred out, nothing cut, nothing censored. This is outright full spoiler.
One of his kind is sure to see.
I assume
the Elden Ring.
There are people who don't pre-order or buy the game at launch day, so
even if it does,
for anyone who's watching this, yeah, this is gonna be full gameplay. Later on, I think there will be some skips in my gameplay due to the nature of the game being an open world game, and it's quite easy to diverge, to get off track. Well, I shouldn't say off track. I think that's probably the intention of the game developers, to wander around, pick up items, get stronger on the way, and experience this world. And it's quite the vast world. But yeah, this is the opening dungeon, which has some enemies in it, as you will see, but fairly weak enemies, and this is, I think, for testing out your build and getting acquainted, getting used to the gameplay and the mechanics. So, even though there's lots of feelings of being familiar with it, familiarity to previous Souls games of FromSoftware, they added a lot of complexity. Another gameplay mechanic that did not take me long to get used to, but that I think changes a lot of things, is the crouching. it's sometimes odd how enemies react to you and from what distance. So as you can see, I try to not block attacks, but how to say, deflect attacks to open them up for critical step. Not something new, something that has been present in all the previous games, except Bloodborne, I think, where it was more through the use of a gun, not a block. Something that I really love is that it's not just possible to get critical hits through deflecting an attack and getting someone in a vulnerable state, but also through relentless attacks, breaking the stance of an opponent and getting them in a vulnerable state that you can then follow up with a critical attack. I think that adds ton of versatility and makes it quite rewarding to play aggressive and to use attacks that have lots of poise damage and lots of impact against opponents, to the point where it's, I think, almost broken. Like, there are some attacks of some weapons, charged attacks, but also weapon arts, that deal so much poise damage to the stance of an enemy that it's possible to get even bosses into a broken state where their stance is broken with just 2 or 3 attacks, making it possible to follow up with a critical, dealing tons of damage. Yeah, like you see here, against some enemies, a single charged attack will get them into this state with their stance broken. Taller enemies, like the huge giants, require 2 or 3 attacks. Bosses sometimes 3 or 4 attacks. Yeah, this is the first boss. I think I was kind of a chicken. Oh, sorry, it's the second boss. It's like after the mandatory boss. This is a first optional boss, but extremely easy, as you can see. It's a tutorial boss that nevertheless could kill you. It needs to be said that the bow, in combination with the fire arrows, is utterly broken in the first hours of the game, due to this being a fixed fire damage inherent to the fire arrow, which just gets applied to every shot. Yeah, this at the point in the game where you are not leveled up yet, where you don't have access to improved weapons, where every weapon is just a base weapon, that flat damage, that flat fire damage of the fire arrow is just devastating to any enemy and bosses. But the arrows being a limited resource. I think not something to rely on to make the game easier. So I chose a small sword as a starting gift for my character. And these swords are kind of like a consumable items, or like consumable key items that you can use to stick them into these tiny statues to open up an area or remove a fog gate. So I kinda had the gut feeling, due to this area only being unlocked with my starting gift, that is probably not the main road. This is probably not the way to go for me. My gut feeling told me this is an optional, probably more mid-game difficult area. And I was right. Me being who I am, I didn't want to give up. I thought maybe it's just this, I don't know how to call it, this chariot. One shooting me. So, of course I expected enemies. You can never not expect enemies. But... And the enemies, they were not that difficult. They were not a huge pushover. I mean, the amount of strikes it takes... Looking at it, that it takes like 4 or 5 strikes of the katana to beat these enemies. They are clearly not supposed to be early game enemies, but they're not mechanically challenging. And I died, of course. And again, me being me, I couldn't give up. I had to go there again and again. So I pretty much again and again died and tried to get my runes back. If you die, you lose your runes. Same like the souls you had in Souls games. So I tried to speed up that part where I tried to backtrack even more. And I died again. So I want to use this time to talk about some mechanics. I think the dying and being able to regain your lost souls, in this case runes, is mechanically identical to previous games. I think this game is not very punishing. It's dying is not a big punishment. This game offers quite a bit of opportunity to level up. I think the game even includes like farming spots, easy farming spots that the community found by now. For some it might be like a cheap way to cheese your way through the game, but I rather don't give an F about losing my souls and dying than knowing, okay, there's a farming spot that I can go to and get back the same souls in a few minutes. And yeah, it's definitely not as punishing as Dark Souls 2. I think that game, dying in Dark Souls 2, was extremely punishing. Dark Souls 2 was not the most difficult game out of the series, but dying in Dark Souls 2 made you go hollow, and with each death, each successive death, you would go a bit more hollow. You would further hollow. And each hollowing would take off, like, if I remember, like 5% of your total max HP. Not forever, but put you into a hollowed state where this would be an effect. With 10 deaths in Dark Souls 2, leaving you with 50% reduced maximum HP hit points, which was absolutely devastating. Dark Souls 1, I think the other Souls games were about the same. They're not more punishing or less punishing. I'm maybe just used to it by now. Dying a second time and losing your souls, your runes in Elden Ring sucks, but yeah. If it's not a ton of souls, well, I think like I could bite myself in the ass. So this was the first time me leaving this dungeon, and through trailers, of course, I've seen this map, this scenery kinda, but oh man, being finally out in the open and seeing this glorious view, I think it's a beautiful world. I wouldn't have known how to think about this yellowish tint of everything. Everything has a bit of that yellow greenish hue, like looking at the sky and the clouds. But I think it absolutely matches the setting. It has a bit of an mythical, enchanted, spiritual feeling. It feels like this whole world is just on some kind of spiritual plane that is
tarnished. Come to the of course, unfortunately,
totally different from
guidance,
previous Souls games.
You are fated. Luckily for you, however,
so of course none of the Souls games or FromSoftware games play in a real world setting. The Souls games more in a medieval setting. With yeah, there are some Japanese weapons like katana and weapons inspired from different parts of the world. But mostly, Dark Souls has a very medieval, European setting, with the focus being on armors that look like Central European armor, like plate armor or fluted armor. Bloodborne had a more like a Victorian setting. I think in terms of flair and atmosphere, I think Bloodborne was the game that appealed most. This game, Elden Ring, seems to take inspiration from Norse mythology. I think that's undeniable. Yeah, this is you just saw the dragon flying in. I actually beat that dragon later on in the game, but this one is still difficult later on, early mid game. So absolutely not to recommend to try to take on that thing early game when you freshly released the sun. Wildlife. That bug was annoying as hell. So I think I was really overwhelmed. I didn't even notice there are some hints on where to go next. Each of the sites where you can rest, the small yellow hovering soul-like places that serve the role of bonfires from the previous games. The places you can rest at. A lot of the sites have a stream of light pointing into the direction you're supposed to go next. So the confusing thing is sometimes that you might have two sides apart and they point into different directions, kind of diverging. So you have different roads you can go and different ways, different sides point you to, each developing their own quests and leading you into main plot. But in the beginning there's really no one correct way, even though some areas are unarguably more difficult. And I think for the first 30 minutes it might be better to just stick to the suggested road, not get off track too much, because in the huge world of Elden Ring I feel it's kind of easy to get lost. And then dying, you have to get back your runes. And if that's off track, you might have amassed quite a bit of runes on the way. That can be annoying. But on the pro side, you might get some nice items early on. So I would suggest either like for the first 3, 4, maybe 5 hours to stick to the road mostly. Or B, unless you're using a guide, you informed yourself online and you are after picking up specific items early on, specific weapons to carry you through the game early on. Not a necessary thing, but I think sometimes if you build your stats towards being viable for a specific weapon, that build might not be viable with any other weapons you find early on in the game or you have access to at that point. So it might absolutely be worth getting the weapons that suit your build. Yeah, so that's it with the first part of my playthrough, and as you noticed, it is pretty much the opposite of a speed run. It's a slow run. So if you enjoyed it and you just enjoy me rambling and going on about it, stay tuned. I will upload more of my footage. Um, for now, it's pretty. I recorded pretty faithfully every step I did. Like I said, later in the game, I will only record me doing major dungeons and the the main part, progressing through the main part of the game. But um, as I said, I hope the interesting part will be for you the me commenting and elaborating a little bit and giving my ideas on what's viable and what works best in the game. So yeah, thank you for tuning in. Stay with me, and I hope to see you again. Bye.